expertise, as he helps people like you not only clarify your financial goals, but to invest with military precision to achieve them. Listen in for mission-focused financial planning and disciplined investment management strategies that will help you turn your dreams into reality. Now, it's time to strap in and prepare for takeoff as we kick in the afterburners for today's show.
This show has one mission: to make your dreams reality. I'm Steve Anchorstar, and I'm on time, on target. Hello, everyone, and welcome to On Time, On Target Financial Thought Leadership Series. And I have a true privilege for you today because I have Rocco on with me to talk about her numerous experiences, which you already heard in her bio. But leading up to what I am super interested in is her passion on taking care of veterans and veterans issues is what she really likes to be involved in. But there's so much in between that we need to hear about. So Danny, welcome. And why don't you go ahead and start us off with some of your backstory about your rather unique childhood?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. I love everything that you're doing. So thank you again.
Of course.
So yes, I did have kind of one of those unique childhoods. I'm that 1%. I had my son at 16 years old, the ones that, which led me on to, the projection of where I am today. So at the time I had him at 16, I was going to school, finished my high school diploma, went to night school, was going to college, waitressing, doing the best that I thought, that I was supposed to do it. 16 and a baby and on my own, mind you, I lived on my own. And then my dad called me up one day. I was in North Carolina. He was in New Hampshire, and he said, "Do you want to come and work for the family business?" And I'm like, sure. I mean, it's not like I have, a lot going, I had a lot going on down there, but I didn't have like a lot going on down there. So packed up Jacob and we went to New Hampshire. We drove up to New Hampshire.
All right. So once you get up to New Hampshire, and then the family business. Now, I know you ended up as CEO of the business for a long time. So let's talk about kind of how you worked your way up and what it was like working for Dad.
Well, we're very, very Italian, very old school Italian. That is a story amongst itself, but I wasn't handed a silver spoon. Here's a company, Danielle. You know nothing about running a business. Go run it. No, I started at the very bottom. I was cleaning the toilets. I was basically the janitor, and eventually had to prove myself. I could not be the janitor. I could actually teach, and then from teaching, I could actually do marketing, and then, I slowly worked my way up. Was fired like at least a dozen times. And I was like, nope, I'll be back tomorrow at 9 o'clock a.m.
There you go.
And then about 10 years in, I took over everything. He didn't even know what our bank account was or a mortgage company anymore.
All right. So after that time, so 14 years, I think, was how long you spent as the CEO. And tell us about that
10
experience.
Years in, then 14, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us about that experience, because really most people, when you think CEO of a business, you're 40 years old, and here you were late 20s, early 30s, right? So tell us about that experience. Also, with the child, with Jacob at that age, and how was that? What was that like?
So I was very blessed that it was a gymnastics school. So I, as a child, was a professional ballerina. My brother was a gymnast. He was all over the world competing for the United States, lived at the Olympic Training Center. My father was a gymnast, a collegiate gymnast, a coach of the college UNH gymnastic team. So we were a very athletic company. So that was the business we were in. So I was very blessed that Jacob could come with me to work every day. So that was exciting. But being a CEO at that age was very challenging because people saw me. They're like, you're 25 years old and you're going to tell me what to do. So for a very long time, that created, like, I had to hide behind my age. I had to become somebody that I actually wasn't, which was part of a learning, something I had to learn emotionally, which created a lot of abundance later on in life. But there was a lot of defensive action in the very beginning. Yes, with my father to prove myself, but more with the community, because they just saw this young chick instead of a businesswoman.
I could only imagine. Was it parents you were kind of dealing with? Did you have youth programs? And the parents, of course, can be, how parents can be, right? So, uh,
Yeah. Yeah, and a very high level. This wasn't just a typical gymnastics school. We had international gymnasts. We were traveling all over the world, competing
oh,
with them,
wow. Okay.
getting them into college. So this was a very high level. We called it a school, but it was a very high level business in that niche.
Okay. Well, that's a great story. And one thing I meant to ask you about earlier, but you brought it up. But talk to us about, professional ballerina. Like, when did you get started? Was that a passion, or I just always remember doing it kind of thing? Or what's the story there?
So I always remember doing it, and I'm sure I got into it because my family were all athletes. My mother was a professional modern dancer back in her day. So, I was 5 when I was accepted into my first company. It'd
Oh,
probably
wow.
they would probably call it child abuse now. What we had to do, like you went in, it was sort of all day long. Your parents were not allowed to watch. I just remember walking into this grand ballroom and these massive doors shutting, and a man in the back of the room in this, it looked like a crown, like a chair, like a king's chair, with a staff. And they just told you what to do. And you either performed or you didn't perform. You were in or you were out. And it was like this all day.
Wow, that's crazy. My kids, I have 2 daughters, a high schooler and a middle schooler. They used to do cheerleading, and it was very similar, where parents were not allowed to watch. It's the turn them loose, and boy, are they teaches everyone to be very competitive at such a young age.
Yeah.
So, what did you get to do? Where did you get to travel? Any cool stories from the ballerina experience to share?
I was young because I stopped around 13 or 14. So I was a child protege,
Okay.
which is probably so much different than being an adult ballerina. So my career was from 5 to 13, and I was at the Louisiana Ballet Company. That's where I started. And then I moved to a couple different smaller companies in North Carolina. When my mother moved there, my parents were divorced, so I lived with my mother.
Okay.
So my experience would be much different than if I was doing it in my 20s or 30s. I just remember, to me, it felt like waking up in the middle of the night to go perform. And it was probably like a 6 o'clock show,
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That is a great story and very cool thing for you to be involved in. And
Yeah.
so let's go back to the CEO. So you spent so many years as 10 plus years as the CEO of a company, and then you moved into your next career, which was then coaching CEOs. So which seems perfect, right? Because you have 10 years of experience, even though you're kind of younger than this normal CEO age or a normal CEO coach. So talk to us about your entry into coaching CEOs and that experience.
Yeah. So when my brother and I decided we had kind of, it was time for us to leave the family business and like take on our own wings, so to speak. And my brother stayed in that industry, and I did not want to stay in that industry. So I was like, what am I going to do? Now, yes, I was the CEO, but along with that, I was coaching families. I was coaching children and everything. There was a lot of emotional coaching that I was doing, and I had a bunch of different certificates along the way.
Right.
Education to me is knowledge, right? So even though at the time I wasn't going to use them, I was like, well, I want to learn more, and teach me. I don't know. So I get out into the real world, I guess, with these certifications, and I have a big belief in God. That is my faith. I'm a Christian, and so I'm like, in this craziness, what am I going to do? Just guide me. I'm open. I'll say yes if it aligns with my morals. And then here we go. So I was at a nutritional conference.
Okay.
Out in Arizona. So I live in New Hampshire, and I was out in Arizona, and I met in the hotel. There was also a life insurance conference going on, and
right.
the CEO of that happened to be there, and we all started talking, and then voila, I end up with my first CEO client, just organically.
Yeah, well, it's meant to be, and you were ready and positioned for it, and you had the right background, so it's kind of a natural fit, obviously, for somebody who was looking for a coach, and I've used a coach since I got into this business. It's funny because I would have never used a coach when I was like 40 or even 45, but now that I'm 50, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Somebody else's perspective that comes in and says, no, that's you can do this better, you do this better. It's like, oh, well, it's kind of obvious when somebody else tells you.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so I get that. All right, so any cool experiences while you were coaching CEOs that you want to share?
The best part that I loved was the traveling. I love to travel. That was one of the best things about owning a gymnastics school. I was going all over the world, all over the country, constantly competing, seeing and meeting people. I'm a chatty Cathy by nature, so it fit very well. Even though I'm shy, I am a chatty Cathy once you get me going. But so that was really fun. Which would be actually the reason why I had to leave that industry, but they would call and be like, hey, can you be in Chicago in 3 days? Or how does Greece fit in your schedule in a week? And to me, yay, awesome, but I'm married and I have 6 children. So it's not a good time and place in my life to be able to do that. But so travel was very cool and just fascinating, which I loved about CEOs. And then maybe it's because the average CEO is, 55 and above, and they're ready to work. And I mostly worked with the relationship side of it, helping them have that same powerful relationship at home as they do in their company. But they want to work.
Right.
This is my issue. I'm blinded by myself. Help me, get me from A to Z.
No, that makes perfect sense. You did mention family, so 6 kids. Congratulations. That's amazing effort and achievement in itself. Now, you have a story about your youngest in the military, and go ahead and share that with us.
Yeah, so my youngest, Jacob, well, he's my oldest, I guess, but when I had him, my youngest.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, he is. There's something maybe about your first child. There's also something about when you have them so young, because I never raised my children being their friend. I am your mother. I will support you, but I'm not your friend. This is my philosophy. But when you're growing up yourself and you're having a child grow up right next to you, you're not friends, but it created this different bond for me with him, this different emotional attachment. Not better, not more than my other children, just very different experience for me. And so when he decided, actually 8th grade, he was going to join. He first was going to be a missionary, and then he decided he was going to join the military. When he hit high school, he joined ROTC. And he was going to be a Marine, and that was it. And that changed me. They say there's certain things that in your life that change you. One was having him at 16. One was leaving. One of my big things was leaving the company, our family business. Another thing was, a car accident that I should have died from. Like, these were massive changes of me as a human being. And him joining the military and going through that as a mother definitely evolved in a different way.
So I assume with being a Marine, he probably did time in Iraq and Afghanistan, all the lovely places that I've been to.
Yeah, he was a little later than that. So he did he didn't see any like combat. He did more MEWs and training. MEWs are like training, for people that don't know what a MEW is. So all of his deployments were more like MEWs or going in and training different countries and reenacting instead of actual combat.
Sure. Well, still good experience, and thank him for his service. And thank you as a mom. That's one perspective I don't have. I could only imagine what my mom was thinking for 20 years when I was out and about. I know she was always worried, but I can't imagine what the emotions would be. So that is kind of a tie to the military. And let's transition now. So you did some CEO coaching, you did some life coaching, and then you have some amazing projects. And this is the backstory on how I found Danny. Was I knew that I had a handful of people here that I had built relationships with here in Texas. And I was kind of looking for a vocal proponent of veterans. So I went online, I started looking for veterans podcasts, and Danny's name popped up, and I saw the Devoted to a Soldier, and I was like, well, that looks amazing. So I did about literally 60 seconds of research and loved everything I saw, all the different projects. I can tell your heart's in it. I can tell your passions with supporting the military. I love that, obviously. I love the flag in the background. I just love all of it. So why don't you start telling us about how you got started working with veterans, and pick one of your projects and you can start with that.
Oh, so when I decided that I was going to not do CEOs anymore, it just didn't fit into it was creating more issues of me at home than the money was worth. The money was fantastic, right, and I loved it. But you have to pick a balance in your life, family or money. And for me, it was family. So but I didn't know what I was going to do. To be honest with you, I was like, One of my best friends said to me over lunch, she said, what have you always done, Danielle, that nobody knows you do? It's your passion. You wake up thinking about it. You go to bed thinking about it. And it is our military and our veterans. I've been doing it even before Jacob joined, my cousin. He went right over into Afghanistan, 3 tours, amazing man. And so it's always been that. So I said, okay, how can I translate everything, all this knowledge that I have accumulated through my life, and focus it there? So I wrote a book devoted to a soldier, strengthening the family unit, because highest divorce rate, a lot of them fall apart. I hear the stories from when my son was going through it. And that to me was just another ripple effect when you become a veteran. I mean, if your family falls apart, or even active military, your family falls apart, you're going through a huge transition. It's just one more, stone in the lake of things that break you down and not lift you up. So that's kind of where I started, which then led into a documentary, because I was like, well, the book's over. What if people don't read?
Right.
No. So I started traveling, creating this documentary, giving veterans a voice to just speak what's ever on their heart. But I'm a very, I want to say, eclectic, unique, kind of quirky individual. And so I would create like these Italian potlucks at the local VFW, and we would just have this great big party, and local veteran artists would come in, and I'd bring a resource panel of whether it was medical resources in the veteran community or whatever it was. And then people would share their stories with me after these 2 days of getting to know me and celebrating life and celebrating their success as human beings. And then COVID happened, and so I took it all online. And then here we go. I was
there you go, right?
Nothing's stopping me. We're going to keep moving forward.
Well, that is certainly the theme that I'm hearing through all this stuff. And that's for our listeners out there is, you can't control the curveballs life throws at you. But here you have a perfect example of somebody that's pressing forward, and it really doesn't matter what door closes, another door is going to open. And that doesn't happen by accident. Somebody, you press forward and you do that. So thank you for all that you've done. In addition to Devoted to a Soldier, you also have some projects with Les Brown. So go ahead and tell us about that.
Yep. Again, if you remember, I said I like to talk, and I'm a chatty Cathy, and I think human beings are amazing. Whether we agree or not, we are amazing individuals. We just have to talk to each other. So along my travels of, flying to LA and going to different events, I have accumulated some great people in my life. And Les Brown and his daughter, Ona Brown, were doing a book project. And so a mutual friend of theirs and mine reached out and said, you would be perfect. They want to meet you. I was like, sure. Now, mind you, I said I wrote a book, and now I have I'm a co-author in 2 other books. I am not a writer. I can barely speak the English language, let alone write it. So it's very scary and very challenging. Sure. But again, when something comes into my heart, or I feel, it aligns with me and everything's right, I think the only thing to do is say yes. Whether you fail at it or not, yes is the answer, because if you don't, you've already failed. So that's what happened. A mutual friend, and then I interviewed with them, and they're like, yep, you're in, and that's the end of that.
It happens fast, right? Well, I love your attitude, and you're being very humble. You probably, if you could see yourself from the outside in, you're probably a lot better writer than you think you are, with some of the accolades you have. You also, along the way, you have an interesting story about where you filled a need. So talk about getting your life insurance certificate, or what?
License.
License. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
And why'd you do that?
So as I was traveling, and you start to hear the same stories, different face, different place. But what I was finding was so many, like I would say over 90% of veterans didn't have life insurance, or they thought that what they had in service, they realized they don't have now, didn't translate because they didn't do the proper paperwork when they left. But so I said, well, I'll get my license so I can be a great resource, a great educator along with everything. Kind of goes with my theme, actually. Like, now that I hear myself talk, I'm like, I think I've done this more than once. But so I went and got my license, which, by the way, I feel when, so my husband is kind of in that industry, different, but in that industry. And he said to me, and I'm glad he never told me. So everyone out there, if you know something is very hard and challenging and someone is about to do it, shut your mouth and do not tell them that. Because you will put a subconscious kind of pain and suffering on them that's not needed. So I decided I was going to do this. 2 weeks later, I studied my butt off for 2 weeks and took the test. After I took the test and passed, my husband said, Danielle, people study for that license for months, like 6 months to a year, and they usually fail 2 to 3 times. And I was like, oh, well, I'm so glad you didn't tell me that.
Exactly, right?
So please keep your mouth shut if you know something's hard and someone's going for it. But I got my license to just basically be able to educate as I'm talking with people. And then again, organically, people are just like, well, I want you to help me. So sure. I found a niche product that's all it is. And it has a living benefit. So if you like survive a heart attack, a stroke, cancer, a TBI, you can take out like 80% of your insurance. Anything other than that, I'm going to be referring you, everybody, like to all people out there that I know. But yeah, so again, it's just something I kind of picked up, saw a need, and don't give away what you can do yourself.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. And what a story of just kind of, you saw another open door and you went through it and you did what it takes. It's funny you made the comment about don't tell somebody the challenges in front of them, because I have a dear friend of mine who runs a salon in Franklin, Tennessee. And we were joking one night about being business owners, and we got on if you had to do it all over again, would you have done it? And she was like, heck no. If I'd have known everything that it would have taken to get all the way through there, I'd have probably said, no, thanks. I'll work for somebody else. And she's probably joking, but certainly it's a little tougher. It's better just put your head down and go through it than to think about how hard it is, what you're doing. So that's great. All right. So we talked a little bit earlier about, I was going to ask you a mentoring question. So what would you tell either a younger version of yourself or a room full of 20-year-olds about success in life and some philosophy? Coach them up for a few minutes, if you will.
All right. So there's a couple things that come to my heart when I hear you say that. And one is, you cannot create your career and dreams around somebody else due to what you feel is your responsibility or your duty, because you're going to create a miserable life. You're going to create a life where you are just in a tunnel. You're going to look back years later and say, where did it go? Where did it go? And that's kind of when I was working for my family. I took it on. It became my responsibility to fulfill my father's dream, to take care of him so he could retire. And I didn't really like what I was doing towards the end. Right. Like, I liked it in the beginning. I think I liked the challenge and the accomplishment, but it wasn't my dream. So that only gets you so far. So you can be very successful in it and make a lot of money, but you're going to have this eye-opening moment one day, and you're going to throw your hands up and walk away from it. And all of that work will have been for nothing. Wow. So that is the first thing that I thought of. And then the second one was, we are such a fear-based society. We are fear of people not liking us. We're fear of not being successful. We're a fear of failure. And all of those things they're just stopping you from achieving what is your potential. You can be as successful and make as much money as you want, but if you live and act out of fear, you've already created this block. You have maxed out your capacity.
Right. Well, those are wise words. And as you're saying, especially that second one, living in fear right now in the middle of the pandemic, who knows when it's going to end, if we're near the end or if we're not even close, living in fear, and it really can take a toll. But those are great words. I think back to military training too. As military, you have a bunch of superstar young individuals. You're just trying to unlock all their potential and, make them so they're not afraid to go out and do great things in the world. So I know that there are people listening right now that really love your story and want to hear more from you and want to check out your book and things like that. So how can they get a hold of you? Whatever you feel comfortable passing out. And we'll also put that in the show notes as well for people to see.
Sure. So my website, you can get to everything, which is Danny Rocco, but I'm a girl, so I'm going to spell it because nobody can spell the girl version right. It's DANIROCCO. But from there, you can get to my Devoted to a Soldier website. You can get to all my social media platforms, all the interviews that I do, all the live resource panels with some amazing people, my daily snippets, my life insurance, my books. Everything is kind of right there for you to click on of whatever the interest is. Because there's, like I said, I'm a little eclectic, I guess. So
there's a lot of stuff
What's
there.
your flavor?
There's a lot of stuff there, that is for sure. And that's how I knew I wanted to bring you on, because it's a story of uniqueness. And so thank you for coming on to the show today and sharing your story. And for our listeners out there, you've got a motivational story. I was inspired by it. Hopefully you can take some of those lessons that Danny was talking about and the experiences she's had to apply that to your life. And with that, I just wish you all the best, and I hope you stay on time, on target with both your financial and career goals out there. Thanks for listening in.